Możesz?
This poem has to do with how boy approaches a girl. I think it has to do with boy not knowing that he already has to go. I think that the ultimate warrior himself can only ever go into the self and death. But there really could be such thing as not being quite himself. You know, if there's such a thing as God, that means God could be overlooking our endeavors. God could be seeing how we address a receiver and around and look into the eyes of the observer, then toss the receiver. The question I'd ask is, what was the image of John Milton's Satan in 17th century? Or is it just a reason to create a struggle and a strife? And once you ask questions like this, you realize that all you want to be doing is reading poetry or writing poetry. And for as long as this lasts, you're not entirely free, you know? And then if you just read and not write, it probably means you're Satan. And if you probably say Oscar Wilde is a guy who had a quote that I cannot recall. Edgar Allan Poe would be my favorite if he was to be compared to Oscar Wilde.
Dođi odmah!
Gospođo, obucite to i pojte.
Jel ne smije? So are we filming?
Mhm.
So if we were gonna talk Oscar Wilde as opposed to Edgar Allan Poe, he is all about discussing the way a muse transforms into a, say, noble hero. And in that sense, his poetry is fairly static, which the 9 muses hold in empery. 3 furrows, spoils, treasures, these remain, driving his pampered jades. Milton's solemn harmonies. It is funny how Oscar Wilde is happy to mention Milton. Ci stai moccando? Due sigarette. It's funny how I always thought that smokes are quite big for my face. That somehow doesn't take the pleasure of consuming them. Having Wilde mention Milton in his poetry so bluntly makes me wonder whether great minds have always had something like a collision, you know? Do you know, I can't help thinking and overthinking about Mark Twain, you know? So choose a character in history that would probably put a crown on my head and that put it on one side and have me look like a joker. That definitely is Mark Twain. And if Mark Twain heard me saying this on a day like this, he'd probably say, "Hey Aurora, you probably would have wanted to have met Tom, or is it Tom Sawyer, or Huckleberry Finn, or any of my boys, to be honest." And then I'd say, "You know what, Mark? That is correct." And he'd say, "Well, I apologize to you awfully for not being able to provide for any of them at this time and hour." So then I'd say, "You know what, Mark? I will hold this against you my entire life." And then, maybe at some point, not surprise you. Well, if that happens, however, I'd be extremely pleased having announced and this very particular moment. So you could see that as something solemn that I have to share with you. If this is a word of a poet, I would have to ask you to essentially kill me right now, because I will never be a poet or a writer, never in a million years.
Kamera ide.
You know, if I was asked to project an image of how I'd be, it would probably be a grasshopper pose. Grasshopper pose does not have to do with posing. It has to do with thinking about poetry that you can't write. Why would I not write? I wouldn't draw though, I wouldn't paint, you know? Because it's martyrdom, you know? And if I'm a martyr, how am I ever to communicate myself? You know, you could actually have on the piece of paper, terribly sorry for being terribly blunt, at my camera person, but I must say that I find grasshopper pose rather conveniently deceiving at saying I literally have nothing to say. So once I've said that, I probably have to mention that I'd rather be hanging somewhere where streets speak to the person less than a person asks from a street. If this is a context that I'm trying to imagine or anticipate, then Milton or Mark Twain would be exact same thing. And if they are to be exact same thing, then you have to accept it. Once you've accepted it, you know exactly where to go. If his number 44 doesn't say anything about his life path as a person, that what he achieved is leaving an unread message, which is so passé that I can't be bothered at slamming entire casts of Mark Twain's opus magnum, if that's what you call it in Latin. What I'd rather say is whatever had Tom Sawyer against the fence. Because why would he paint the fence? There's no reason for it. You know, it's labeled. Was it labeled to Tom Sawyer though? I don't think it was. Do you think Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn were actually competitors? I'm not too sure. How nihilistic can a person get? Is that the reason why writers die writing about boys? Who do you think has more body? Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn? If you were a scorpionic character, you'd probably say Huckleberry Finn. If you were more of a Gemini character, you'd probably say Tom Sawyer. Is there a quarrel there? Are Huckleberry Finns of the world condemned to Huckleberry Finnian options? And is Tom Sawyer left with Tom Sawyer crew? And is there such a thing as unspoken sadness in between the two? If yes, then I'm concerned. Don't you think that Mark Twain's Mysterious Stranger 44 and his image of young Satan is slightly unclear? I think it is, because I would say that Mark Twain at the end of his life has dismantled his characters to write Mysterious Stranger 44. He has lost by the point of that book, or a novel. I'd rather say book, because I do not relate to the term novel. Novel is about writing, book is about saying. So what Mark Twain said at the end of the day is, I'm terribly sorry. I can maybe plant maybe an aspiration towards understanding my character of Satan. So almost as if he apologized to all the boys who decided to play with Satan in the book, saying, you know what, at this point of my achievements or a prize that could be seen as sarcasm, I can't quite give you the face. So will you be focusing on how Satan is to lead the game they're playing in a book, or the game I orchestrated? Somehow, forget who's with. If the boys can achieve a day of total oblivion at how Satan keeps them entertained without them noticing, this would be an impossible sentence, because oblivion has happened because of a character of Satan in the book. My concern is the portrait of what Mark Twain imagined, and then obviously never finished the book, because that book does not have an ending, is what can be presented in a false manner to others by using drama to understand how Satan's faces change. If that was too much, I probably could, discuss that mysticism is the last resort of not being able to see. So is there such thing as a dark Scorpio king, say, or dark Scorpio boy? Or is there such thing as a poet without a complaint? Poet without a complaint is as untouchable as a dark observer is, you know? So is Mark Twain's death then left with his what would you call it? Like, has Mark Twain resigned at the end of his life? Has he said, I check out here? Or did he essentially say, to be honest with you, that's it, you know what I mean? Or that will be it. I don't like thinking about the writer, and I think that's fairly good. Is that how the atmosphere of the place can make an imprint on your memory? And how much is nature affected by our presence? It's probably not giving the all about being in this forest, which is unfortunately my case. I, however, choose to levitate on the very fact of not being bothered or not being able to be asked about how it complements the environment I'm in. So rather than saying there's plenty of oxygen in here, I'd say, how about let's forget about breathing for a moment. And then I'd probably ask you to tell me, do you believe in a concept of a black dahlia? Is that a joke? Or could she be a joker, on the other hand? If yes, I wouldn't underestimate, without underlining, that the characteristic of a walking disaster should be unmentioned before it's clear. Choosing to over-elaborate why is where I just flee the set, which I had to do right now.